can I just invite you to take your seats for our next session? Thank you. It gives me great pleasure in introducing our next speaker, of whom many of you will know. Hamish has a wonderful history in the Presbyterian Church, has a wonderful history in Presbyterian schools, this one for 21 years. He is the moderator designate of the Presbyterian Church at Aotearoa, New Zealand, which position he's about to take up. I personally have known Hamish for many years, firstly in my time at St Andrews as a prep school teacher, then as a mentor as my time in church ministry, and I was hoping to learn lots and lots from him as a chaplain of a school, this one particularly, and so I applied to become his assistant, of which he said he would give me 2 or 3 years, and he took off after a year. But that was all good because he continued to play a role in me becoming ordained within this school as a chaplain, and has continued to encourage me and be a great friend. And so it's wonderful to have you, Hamish, come and speak to us about empowering generations, and he has a lot to say and stands in a good place to tell us about that. So welcome, Hamish.
Thanks, Paul. Lovely to be here with you. Actually, Paul didn't tell the full story because he came to work with me, and then he was worshipping at Hornby Presbyterian Church, which became a Hope, and told the senior minister there, Murray Talbot, who was looking to retire, well, Hamish is looking for something in the next wee while, so he kind of facilitated this. So, I was in Taranaki just recently. My son and daughter-in-law and beautiful granddaughter Bella live up there, and we were in New Plymouth, Bella and I, and there's an art gallery there. It's quite big, and it takes art from anyone who wants to display it from the region, so there's a whole variety of pieces there. And I saw this piece of art that really struck me, and I'm still thinking about it. So my question today is, why bother with RE? And I reckon this piece of art says a lot about that. There it goes. Okay. I was pretty tempted to buy it. It was only $215. But my wife answered, I don't know where you can put that, Hamish. I thought, we could put it in Cashmere Presbyterian Church where I am now. So look at that piece of art. It struck me. I'm still thinking about it. What do you see in there? What do you get out of that? What's the message? What is it?
An emotional response to start with.
What is that, Gillian?
I hate it.
Do you? Okay.
It's a dying empire.
Dying empire. That's interesting. Because of the skull. Yeah.
Death of America.
Death of America. What else do you see there?
What's at the bottom?
Well, at the bottom, that's interesting because you can't really see that. But you know how they used to have the wagons, the old pioneers, and they circle the wagons. Well, it's a wagon. It's a pioneer wagon that's underneath there.
Reminds me of a Manifest Destiny painting.
Okay, tell me about that. A Manifest Destiny painting.
People are probably just called Manifest Destiny. And it's of a woman, kind of an angel type figure, holding up some kind of torch, leading the American settlers westward. Probably building up their comment about giant empire.
What do you get with the? What do you see here?
Christianity's lost its way.
Why? Why, Paul?
This has got money underneath it, so it's become more associated with capitalism and America.
Yeah, nationalism trumps the crucifix, and money's tied in there somewhere, and I'm going to defend that with a gun. Do you see the gun? Yeah. And I just thought, oh, this really makes me think. But one of the things that it made me think was the complex mixture of politics and economics and religion in our world today, and the fact that that's often been the case as we look through history, and that you can't really understand the way the world is unless you understand these things, and therefore understanding religion becomes a really important part of understanding the world in which we live today. Therefore, in terms of education, it becomes really important. As I was preparing for this, reacquainted myself with a book that I read some years ago when I was teaching here at St Andrews by Houston Smith, who was probably regarded last century as the greatest authority in terms of religious studies, coming out of the States. Great book, Why Religion Matters. It's worth having a good read. He says, the crisis the world finds itself in is located in something deeper than particular ways of organising political systems. That's the flag that was on top of the crucifix. And economies, the dollar sign that was hanging off the crucifix. Its cause is in the spiritual condition of the modern world. That condition is characterised by loss, the loss of religious certainties and the transcendence with larger horizons. I've got a quote later, which is interesting too, where he says that the earliest artefacts that we've discovered, archaeologists have discovered, are not economic or political, but religious. And you know, the earliest song that we've discovered, and it's out of, I think, Syria, and there was some profile on that last year on Radio New Zealand. The earliest song is a religious song. And so this religious thing, this spiritual journey is deeply embedded in the human condition. Now, the UK, I think, does this well with their religious education. So in the UK, there's a system of teaching religious education right through their education program, their curriculum. And I like this, religious education, academically rigorous and personally inspiring. And there's a quote that goes with their curriculum that says, religious education that provides our young people with tools to interpret religious issues and evaluate their significance. I like that. I like those two things. To interpret and to evaluate. So I think that piece of art that I saw was someone, an artist, seeking to interpret what was happening in American society. And I think the last 5 years or so, with Trump's presidency and the rise, I think, of what has been not just white supremacy, but white Christian supremacy in the States, has raised all kinds of questions about how do we interpret that? What do we make of that? And then now we've got this guy here as the President of the United States, and probably the most outwardly and inwardly committed Christian since Jimmy Carter. And so how do we interpret him and the difference between a man called Trump, who stands, clears the crowd with tear gas and stands outside a church opposite the White House with the Bible? Some say it was upside down, I don't know. Versus this man who's also saying he's Christian, but has got a whole different set of values. And so those two things that are being talked about there, to interpret, but also to evaluate, becomes a really important thing if our young people are to understand the world today, what's happening in the world, and to work it all out. I reckon there's a tragedy and an opportunity in New Zealand society today. I think the tragedy is that the secular education system pretty much ignores the religious dimension. There's very little that is taught or evaluated or interpreted in the secular education system in New Zealand, compared with, say, the UK. But then the opportunity is for schools like the church schools, the opportunity for schools like the schools that you are part of to do that well and to prepare our young people for a world where religion is so important and you can't understand the world unless you understand it. So I reckon there's a tragedy and an opportunity, and you've got the opportunity. This, for me, was really highlighted after the mosque attack. One of the quotes out of the ARI system in the UK was this: ARI has the power to challenge the stereotypes, promote cohesion and tackle extremism. And Peter Nelson, Peter here, who's on the board at St Andrews College, we're in Kashmir Presbyterian together, and we were talking about this. Peter made a comment to me that I think is so true. It took the mosque attacks here in Christchurch for us Christchurch people to deepen our understanding of Islam. And I'm sure that's been the case. I've been really fortunate because my wife Anne, in her previous job, worked with a Muslim woman named Harry, and they befriended us, and they live in our area, and it's been a lovely relationship. So they're very hospitable. They love to have you for meals, so we've been for lots of meals there. The problem for me is that they like to sit on the ground, and I'm not very good at that. So it's kind of uncomfortable in one way, but it's beautifully comfortable in another way because of the hospitality that they extend to us. And then Anne, my wife Anne, serves on a community board with the Imam of the mosque, Jamal, and then he moved into our street. And so we had a lovely thing during Ramadan, you know, how they eat after dark. And so a couple of times they just asked us to come and join them to eat, and it was quite a house full because of people from the mosque. Here's the thing, because I taught religious education and had a little bit of understanding about Islam, I was able to engage in conversations and ask questions, and you know, they love to have that conversation. And they want to know what you think. And one night we were sitting there, we had a beautiful feast, and I was sitting there talking to this Muslim gentleman from Pakistan, and we were just sharing this stuff around what he thought and what he believed. I was able to say about the 5 pillars of Islam, and you know, and ask him about this, and it was just a wonderful conversation that was facilitated because I've had the privilege of doing religious education here at St Andrews, teaching it, and had enough information, A, to break down the stereotypes, but B, to engage in the conversation. And I think if we can prepare our young people to have those conversations, then it really does break down these stuff. And I think they're interested. You know, when I was here at St Andrews one year, I arranged for the Imam of the mosque at that time to come in and speak at a Year 13 speaker period. So Year 30, you still do that, Christine? Yeah. So it was just after 9/11, and so it was quite topical. And he came in, they were very interested, and they asked him about the conspiracy theory that it was actually this, is it the FBI or the CIA that organised the planes? And he said, I'm open to that possibility, which you can imagine that we really interestingly. But it was, they were talking. And yet here's the thing, that when I went to ask him if he would come and speak, it was the first time I'd ever been to the mosque, and I was nervous, and I kind of wasn't sure where to go, and I eventually found him, and I know that he was nervous about coming here and speaking to me, but I think in Christchurch today, in terms of the relationship between the churches and the mosques, that's broken down, and that's a wonderful thing. And the wonderful thing also is that at the end of the year, the students voted on the speaker periods which ones they liked the best, and that was number 1. So I thought it was really cool. Just a couple of things here in terms of the big picture understanding of the importance of religion in the world today. And so the first one is the influence of religion in the world. I'll specifically look at Christianity, but So there's a whole heap of different religions that impact really deeply on the way the world is today. But in terms of Christianity, think about the ways in which the Bible has influenced the world today. So names like Andrew, Joshua, David, Sarah, Peter, Elizabeth, Esther, names that have come out of the Bible. Our calendars have been shaped, our seasons and our holidays. You think of music, Bach and Mozart and Handel, but also in more contemporary times, U2, Mumford and Sons, and even the Spice Girls, two become one, have songs that have been influenced by or taken text or ideas from Christianity. In Shakespeare, there are 1,300 quotes or allusions from the Bible. This great writer, how can you understand Shakespeare if you have ignorance about the Bible? And I think about that and I think, wow, this is a pretty influential book. It's part of a system of religions in the world that has impacted on the world. I've got a little video clip, it's just a couple of minutes, it's interesting and it just gives a wee insight into this. Video clip.
Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labour in vain.
I love reading and I love books. Sometimes I read on my
Kindle, but I still love to have a hard copy in my hands too. Here are a few global bestsellers that you may be familiar with. Perhaps you've read these.
The best-selling book of the last 5 years.
The Bible.
Yeah.
The best-selling book. Well, it won't be the Bible anymore, I can tell you that.
So many books on the bestseller list. I can't tell.
Oh, I don't know, deliciously Ella.
Something like Lord of the Rings? Hobbit?
I'd say it's definitely Gone Girl, personally. I think, yeah. I think any book that's been made into a film, but I think Gone Girl's had the biggest. I mean, you've got the Oscars and everything as well with the award there, but yeah, definitely Gone Girl.
50 Shades of Grey?
I would guess it's probably like Harry Potter or something like that.
50 Shades of Grey.
But it may surprise you to realise that the Bible is still the world's best-selling book every single time.
Really? No, okay, yeah, that surprises me. That surprises me. I don't know. I think people kind of stick their nose up at religion.
Oh, really?
Yeah, still the Bible.
Is it really?
No.
Really?
No.
Wow.
No.
I wouldn't have thought it's the sort of thing that people would go out and buy and still read, really, I guess. Last year, more copies of the Bible were bought and sold than all these others put together.
A favourite period of Christian history for me, which was in the 19th century, and the likes of William Wilberforce and the evangelicals who just made a huge impact, including our treaty, the impact that they had on the Treaty of Waitangi. But the abolition of slavery, even the SPCA, can trace itself back to them. And the book that's been written that Paul put me onto just recently by Tom Holland, called Dominion. Have you come across this book? So he's a well-known secular historian, an atheist, but he's looked at the impact of Christianity on the world today, and he says, even though many people don't see it, like those people who are asked about, which is the best-selling book, they don't see it. Even though they don't see it, there's just been a huge transformation that took place with the Christian faith that is still having a huge impact today. And here's a quote from him. Holland makes an extraordinary, well-documented case that the central values and priorities of modern Western secular culture have actually come from Christianity. And even now, when most of the educated classes have abandoned Christianity and when religion is in sharp decline amongst the populace. Christianity has such an enduring, pervasive influence that we cannot condemn the church for its failure without invoking Christian teaching and beliefs to do so. Well, that's Tim Keller talking about the book. But just talking about the impact, therefore understanding the world today, we need to understand religion. But I also think it's an existential question, and that we have a responsibility of not just putting these facts out there for our young people so that they can understand the world better. It's about them understanding their place in the world. And I think, in terms of philosophy and well-being and spirituality, we have a responsibility to our young people to allow them to work with the questions, the big questions of life about, where have I come from? Why am I here? How then do I live? Where am I going? Our young people need to work with those questions. They're just so important. I remember at a conference like this listening to Michael Carr-Gregg as part of the church schools movement. Michael Carr-Gregg, a psychologist from Australia, who was saying that our young people, in order to be well, need to have connectedness, and they need to be connected and feel belonging to their family, their school, and to meaning. And if you take that away from them, then they're lost, they're disconnected. And so the teaching of religious education, why bother with religious education? Part of that is actually allowing young people to grapple with these ideas. Smith says, the guy from Why Religion Matters, there is within us, and even the blithest, most light-hearted of us, a fundamental disease. It acts as an unquestionable fire that renders the vast majority of us incapable of, in this life, of ever coming to full peace. This desire lies in the marrow of our bones and in the deep regions of our souls. I believe that, and I believe we need to allow our young people to grapple with that. And Smith puts up as an example of this grappling, this Gauguin painting. Where do we come from? What are we? And where are we going? I hadn't really looked at that painting in depth before, but it actually does grapple with those ideas. And so he gives that as an example of something that is universally grappled with. So what are our origin? What's our purpose? What's our destiny? That's so important for us to allow our young people to deal with those questions. Smith again. Smith says, the modern world seems set on preventing us from getting in touch with this longing, with its unending phantasmagoria. What's that word mean? Anyone know? I do. You don't know? Jordan? Wow. Yeah, it's a dreamlike state where things are kind of out of kilter. Dreamlike state, I guess so. Phantasmagoria of entertainments, obsessions, addictions, and distractions of every sort. But the longing is there. I like this quote. The longing is there, built in us like a jack-in-the-box that presses for release. The longing is there, built in us like a jack-in-a-box that presses for release. And so then the question becomes, okay, if that question is there like a jack-in-a-box that keeps religious education in our schools, what are the barriers? Because, the state system in New Zealand doesn't want to do it. And there's a reason for that. What do you think are the barriers, say, in the state sector? The barriers that prevent this teaching of religious education. I mean, obviously in the UK they've overcome those barriers or just decided that they're not sufficient. But what are they? What stops it?
A vocal minority.
Vocal minority? Could be there.
Generations of people being told that it's not worth thinking about at school.
Yep.
So why would it?
Sidelined, irrelevant. Yeah. But of course it is incredibly relevant. Yeah. But what else?
Government policy.
Government policy, tell me more about it.
Oh, that it was set up that
Yeah.
it doesn't get...
Separation of state and church. Yeah. Any other ideas?
It's fantasy.
It's fantasy, yeah, it could be there just, yeah.
Lack of good teachers.
Lack of good teachers could be there. You know what I reckon? I reckon it's fear. And it's fear, and I think the church has got a responsibility here. It's a fear that the young people are going to be manipulated and bullied into faith. It's a fear that the people teaching this will use it as an opportunity to evangelise and force religion down people's throats. I think that's it. Personally, that's the problem. But it's, you've got to say that's also a problem in our church schools. It could be, but we have to deal with that problem. And I've got a theory about this. At one of the church schools conference years ago, we explored the three different ways in which you can teach religious education. And I found that hugely helpful. I talked about it with the chaplains and RE teachers on Monday. So the first way is a catechismal approach, which is pretty much saying we want to make you into little Christians. And I had an experience here some years ago because I used to do this thing in Year 12 where we talk about, this is the Christian faith. And if you would like to engage with that a bit deeper and think about baptism or confirmation, then we'll have conversations about that. But it's an invitation if you'd like to. And every year a few would want to do that. And then a farmer who had a son in the boarding house rang me and said, I want my son confirmed. I said, we have this program and your son didn't choose to go any further with it. What? He said, when I dip my sheep, do you think I give them a choice? But that's the catechismal approach. It's forceful, it assumes faith, it's a manipulative, I believe. Yeah. And I don't think we want to be in that game. And then there's the neutral approach, which is the UK. And I've got a problem with that too, because I think when you're talking about understanding of life and the big life questions, you need to be able to provide some kind of opportunity for young people to make some personal responses to that. And so I prefer the third, which I would call invitational. And that third invitational way is to say, hey, look at this, this religious sector of our society and what it means to be human. And we're coming at it from a Christian perspective because we're church schools, but we also want to talk to you about what other religions think as well. We want you to consider that and to evaluate that. And we love it also, if you're wanting to make some kind of personal response, to work through that. And if we can help you with that, we'd be really pleased to do so. That's an invitational approach. And I personally think that's the way we should be teaching religious education in our church schools. And the beautiful thing is that we have a real invitation to do that because of the way that these church schools have been founded. This is a beautiful chapel. I'm just in awe of it. I'm also very fond of the old chapel because I worked there for 21 years. I was very fond of that as well. And I know the process that took place around what was going to be rebuilt after the old chapel was compromised by the earthquake. And I remember at one stage Christine was talking about whether it was going to be a dual purpose and pipe band chapel. Remember that? Yeah. And to your credit, you've built this amazing chapel and you've invested in it, and it just stands here proudly as a symbol of the way this school really does value and takes seriously the origins of the school and the values and the faith. But also, I think even more importantly, how crucial this piece is in the education of our young people. And just as this building stands here proudly, I think we need to also stand here proudly with the way we deliver our religious education. Not that it be something we're embarrassed about or sidelined, but something that's central, and we say, actually, there's a tragedy in this country that most of our schools aren't even addressing this, and we're proud to have taken the opportunity that our heritage has allowed us. That's it.
Hamish, do not leave the stage. I just want to say thank you very much. As usual, you have inspired me, made me think beyond myself, but I'm always reminded what a wonderful speaker you are. You engaged us first and then provided us with questions we could think about. But I'm with Anne, that art belongs where it stays.